Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome to day 2 of my 12 days of Christmas. I am very excited about today's video. Today I am sharing with you guys the first in a little series that I will be doing here on my channel over the next 12 days that I am calling the Best in Color series. I have gone through my collection. I have swatched nearly every eyeshadow inside of my collection. This took a full day's worth of work and it was the most fun I've ever had in a 6-hour period. And I have come up with basically the ultimate monochromatic eyeshadow palettes. And what better way to kick things off today by tackling the color green. I have come up with the 12 very best shades of green in my collection, from light to dark in a variety of different finishes and undertones, and we're going to go through them all today. This is kind of like the Emmy Awards for green eyeshadow. I cannot wait to share these with you guys. I feel like there's a shade of green in here for anyone, whether you like green eyeshadow or not. But hopefully you guys are excited about this video, about this series. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Before we jump into it, I want to welcome any new visitors to my channel. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you do, please give it a thumbs up and of course hit that subscribe button. And with that said, let's dig into some eyeshadow palettes and swatches. Alright guys, so I have my bin here of eyeshadows. I have a lot of eyeshadow palettes, a couple of singles in here as well. And I thought we'd kind of go in order from light to dark. So the very first shade that I picked out, the lightest shade, is from Sydney Grace and it actually comes from her Enduring Love palette. This is a very subtle shade of green. It's this one here in the corner. It's a very icy, light mint green. It honestly has more kind of silver and white in it than green, but it does have a subtle green shift. This is the shade that I am wearing all over my lid today. It is one of my favorite green shades because it is one of those that is very subtly green. I mean, this is one of those shades that regardless of what you're putting on the rest of the eye, I mean, you don't have to wear it just with other greens. You can wear it alone. You can wear it with browns. You could wear this with really anything because it is quite neutral, but it's one of those shades that you look at it and you don't know if it's a green eyeshadow. Like, you can barely see the green in it, but when you put greens with it, it really brings out the green in the shadow. I love it so very much. I'm gonna go ahead and just live swatch this shade for you guys. Look at that foil. Cue angel music. If this doesn't make your heart sing, I honestly don't know what would. So beautiful. I love this entire palette. I talk about it all the time, but that is easily the best shade. Moving on to another one that I knew I had to include, and this has been a very long time favorite for me, and it comes from this little palette from Alamar Cosmetics, and it is this shade right here in the corner. It is the shade El Malacon. I'm sure I am butchering that name, but this shade, you guys, has long been a favorite lid shade of mine. It is absolutely beautiful. It actually is a little bit similar to the Sydney Grace shade, which, did I mention the name of this shade? This is the shade John, by the way. I will insert the swatch for you guys right here so you can see how these two shades compare. This one is a little bit more green and it's also just a little bit darker. It is still, I wouldn't call it mid-tone or dark by any means. It's a good inner lid shade if you like something bright on your lid. But as you can see right here, it just has a little bit more of kind of a yellowy green to it, whereas this is more of a silvery green. But I love the option of both of these because they are both so beautiful. Even though I feel like they could be used interchangeably, I wanted to include them both because they are two of my very favorite lid shades. And as for formula, I've often mentioned that I think Sydney Grace's foiled shimmers are they're my very favorites in my collection, and not a lot of formulas really compete with those. This formula actually does. It feels a lot like the Sydney Grace one. It's just as foiled, it's just as intense and opaque and creamy feeling. It lasts really well on the lids. It is just so impactful, so beautiful. If you like metallics and you like green eyeshadows that are a little bit bright and not too obviously green, these would be right up your alley. I love these. The next shade I have is another one from Sydney Grace. Trust me guys, I do have other shades in here. These just happen to all kind of be at the top. But this one is actually quite new to me. This one really stood out to me, and it is the shade Green Mango. Here it is right here. This one does have a lot more green in it, and it's much more of kind of a light blue green, more of a minty kind of green. Here it is right there. This is definitely a green that's going to look green on your eyes, but it's a very flattering green in my opinion. I feel like this is a green that would look good on just about anyone. This would be a really fun green to play around with. I can see this going really well with some browns and neutrals in the crease. I can see it looking beautiful with like some navies in your crease, even some dark silvers or dark grays, or just some other mid to deep tone greens like the ones that we'll be talking about a little bit later. Such a beautiful green. I love that this kind of has a different undertone covered, because in my opinion, if I was creating creating the ultimate green eyeshadow palette, I would want a variety of undertones. I would want some that are more olivey, some that are a little bit more yellow toned, and some that are a little bit more teal and blue toned. And this one definitely goes there. I think it's lovely. I have not actually used this one on my eyes yet, but I am so excited to use it. And I am absolutely certain that the formula will be amazing because it is Sydney Grace and they always are. The next shadow that I instantly knew had to be included in this grouping is from Natasha Denona. This is from her mini retro palette. Now these are very, very subtle greens. So these two greens right here, I'm actually not including them both because I have another one that I actually like a little better than this one. We'll get to that in a little while. But I had to include this shimmer right here for a couple of reasons. It's a really unique color. It's also a unique formula. This is one of her kind of, they remind me a little bit of the ColourPop Super Shock shadows, but they have a little bit more pigment backing to them. They're kind of creamy. They're very sparkly. This one is definitely more of a silver green. It reminds me a lot of the first Sydney Grace green that I showed you, the St. John, with a much deeper undertone to it. This shade looks so pretty on steely gray eyes because it's a steely gray that has a very subtle green shift to it. Love this shade. Whenever I use really this whole palette, but especially that shade on my lid, it's just something special. I love it. I knew I had to include this shade. Coming up next, I have a couple of mid-tone mattes. This is a little bit tricky because I don't have a lot of mid-tone matte greens, but I did find two that are extra special. And the first one is this one right here. This is from the ColourPop Mandalorian palette. All around a good green palette if you are into greens, but today I'm specifically talking about this center shade right here. This is the shade Babyface. It's a really lovely kind of mint light or mid-toned green. Here it is right here. Sorry, I did try to wipe that Sydney Grace shade off. This actually does remind me a lot of that Sydney Grace Green Mango. Let me re-swatch that one for you guys. But a matte. So those two would actually be beautiful together. You could put this one all up kind of through your crease, pop this on the center inner part of your lid. You'd have a really nice soft pastel look. I love those. And had I done this video maybe a month or two ago, I probably wouldn't have included a shade like this. Usually when I'm working in my transition area, I like something that's a little bit more brown or yellow toned or neutral, like an olivey toned green. But I used this in that ColourPop video and I fell in love with it. I love this color right here. It just does something special with a green look, especially when you pop something really nice and bright and like a soft green on your inner lid. The next mid-tone matte green I had to include comes from C Color Cosmetics from their Unisex 3 palette, and it's this shade right here. This is such a fun green shade. This whole palette, I mean, I'm not super thrilled with all the C Color palettes I've tried, but this one, there is something extra special about this specific palette. The mattes in here are so rich and creamy and pigmented and blendable, and this green shade, you guys, it's like a muted lime. So much fun. This is actually the green that I'm wearing up through my crease. I'm just wearing it really lightly above my crease. Have something else kind of in my outer corner, but just take a look at this shade. I mean, you've got the mint covered here, and then this shade right here is much more of like an olivey kind of green. I just love how different these two greens are. I feel like no matter what type of green look you want to do, your bases are covered with these two mid-tone matte greens right there. Moving on to a couple more shimmers, and the next one I had to include, I knew I wanted to include this one, but swatched amongst the other greens, this one is a different green, as you'll see as I swatch it. And it comes from Anastasia Beverly Hills from her Jackie Aina palette. It's this color right here, which is the color Sponsored. This is a really unique shade of eyeshadow. Hopefully you guys will see the green as I swatch it for you. It's such an interesting shade, because when looking dead on, you see a very strong green, but when you shift it to the side, you see a lot of brown, and actually when you look at it kind of from above, you see a lot of purple. Very, very unique shade. One of my favorite shades Anastasia has done, and it is my favorite shade within my favorite palette from them, so that I think says a lot. What I love especially about this shade is this is one of those shadows that you could actually apply this just with a finger or a flat brush all over your lid and then get a blending brush and kind of buff it through your crease. And by buffing off some of that shimmer in your crease, you're going to bring out some of the brown or the purple or the kind of red underneath, and it will make it look like you're wearing more shadows than you actually are. So this is the perfect shadow to use for like a one and done eyeshadow look. If you're in a hurry and you want something that's going to still look glamorous, I love this shade for that. The next shimmer I wanted to include comes from the Alter Ego Artemis palette. This was one of the first palettes I thought of when I was thinking of greens, but as I was going through swatching things, there were a lot of these greens that I do really love, especially within this palette, but some of them I felt like were outdone by others, with the exception of one, and that is this shade right here. This is the shade Pursuit. As you guys will see, there is something just so extra special about this kind of teal green. Look at that color. I just feel like that is a color I just want to put on honestly, not just my eyes. I would love just having this swatched on my hand all day so I could just sit and look at it because I just think it is so, so pretty. Really great, rich, pigmented formula. Beautiful, soft shine in this one. I wouldn't say it's as metallic as like some of the Cindy Grace ones I've shown, but it does have a good, strong reflect to it. It's really beautiful. And that color, you guys, I just can't get over that color. This is like the perfect Christmas color. I'm not one to wear deep greens on my eyes super often. I usually like to keep things nice and bright on the inner part of my lid and then going with like a deep matte green in my outer corner, kind of like I'm wearing today. But on the rare occasion that I want to do like a green smoky eye, I feel like this is the perfect color to just put all over your lid, put something even darker in your outer corner, run this even a little bit on your lower lash line, lots of mascara and a nude lip. I just think that would be such a pretty holiday look. All around, this is another good palette if you're into greens, although I will say this has more orangey and kind of golds and reds than it does greens, but it does have a lot of fun greens in it. But that green really, really stands out. We are down to the last 4 of my favorite green eyeshadows, and these ones I am so excited about because as much as I do love something bright and sparkly and metallic on my lid, I equally love something deep and rich and green and smoky in my outer corner. And one of those shades would have to come from the ColourPop So Jaded palette. This is my favorite shade in this palette, and it's this shade right here, the shade Jade. I love this shadow so much. So after I went in with the C color shade on my transition area, I did put this shade all over my lid. I then topped it with the Cindy Grace one, so it's not showing really strongly, but if you're kind of seeing that kind of army green shift coming out right there, that's coming from this shade. I love this color so very much. It's actually like the exact same color as my sweater. It's a good army green that has a good amount of depth to it, but a nice strong yellow green shift to it. So this shade reminded me of some of the shades in the Artemis palette, but I think this one does have better pigmentation. I actually think it applies and swatches even darker than it looks in the pan, but that's what I love so much about it. It is the perfect outer corner shade if you do like to kind of smoke out your outer corner, or if you're looking for a good matte deep green to line your eyes, this would be a really beautiful one. Great formula, really easy to work with, and I knew I had to include this one because it's probably the most army kind of khaki deep green of all the ones that I have in my collection, and I absolutely love it. But probably even more than I love that one are my last 3 matte greens. These ones are just, oh, so rich and beautiful. And number 10 and 11 both come from Cindy Grace. Let's start with number 10. That is this shade right here. This is the shade Thrilled. I did have a few more blue toned greens within this grouping here today, so I knew I had to have something really deep and blue toned for my outer corner, and this is the ultimate shade for that. Just watch, you guys. Prepare to be amazed. Look how pretty that matte green is. I die every time I swatch these shades. They're so pretty. I have used this one quite a few times before. I love throwing this shade into my outer corner. It's kind of just like a smudgy liner on the outer corner of my eye. It is stunning. Pigmentation is fantastic. It blends like a dream. That is one of the things I love so much about Cindy Grace's eyeshadows. Sometimes when you get into these deep, cooler tones with a lot of brands, sometimes they can get a little bit patchy when you try to blend them. I never have that issue with Cindy Grace's. They blend like a dream, but they also don't blend away. They have really good depth and pigmentation, and I just can't get over that shade. I mean, this shade with that shade from the Artemis palette for like a deep smoky eye, and maybe just a tiny pop of the shade that I'm wearing today just on the inner corner would be the prettiest green smoky eye. If I have the energy to do a smoky eye on Christmas Day, that might be the one that I go for this year. I just can't get over that. I honestly could sit here. I have 5 minutes left on my memory card. I could sit and just stare at those 2 swatches for the next 5 minutes. But why don't we go ahead and add to them? I have another one that I absolutely love, also from Cindy Grace, and that is this shade right here. This is the shade Lost. There are a lot of these deep kind of khaki green tones from Cindy Grace that I really love. This one does have a little bit more green in it, but I love this one because it is a little bit kind of muted army green, but it's also, it has just a touch of blue. It's just a good solid green that's somehow muted but still nice and deep. Just watch, you guys. Look at that. Oh, love that. Is that not just the prettiest thing you've ever seen? I mean, those 2 shades, these 3 shades right here, I just think are spectacular. This is a shade I feel like could go with a lot of different things that we've included already. I feel like it would go with some of the ones that are a little bit more minty and blue toned, but it would also go with some of the ones that are a little bit more kind of that army or khaki color. And a really good option if you feel like colors like this that have a little bit more yellow in them maybe don't look very good on you, or you're just not into that kind of khaki or pukey type of green. This might be a good option for you because it's green, it's deep, it's not quite as blue as this one right here. It's just a good shade for your outer corner. I absolutely love it. And that means we are down to the final shade in my top 12 green eyeshadows. And this one is coming from the Ultimate Eyeshadow Palette, my Juvia's Place Nomad palette. This is another shade that I thought of immediately when I thought of this video. I actually did think of this kind of pukey. I don't know that this is a green though. I would say this is more brown than green. This one I had a hard time placing. Within this color series, I wasn't quite sure where to place it, but I knew I had to have this shade. It reminds me a little bit of this shade from Sydney Grace, but it's even deeper, it's even richer. So if you want something seriously rich, like nearly black, this is going to be the shade for you. Just look at that. Has a good amount of green in it. It's not too yellowy, so if you're not into this kind of yellow tone, but it's nice and rich and dark. This is the color that I am wearing on my outer corner to kind of smoke things out. I'm not even wearing liner today. All of that depth that you see right there is coming from this shade right here. I love this shade. I love this whole palette, but that shade, I mean, there's another shade or two in here that might make an appearance later, but this is definitely one of my favorite shades within one of my very favorite palettes. And that, you guys, is it for the top 12 green eyeshadows in my collection. These are truly the best of the best. Here is a look at all of them lined up together. Does that not make the most beautiful 12-pan eyeshadow palette? Such a great collection of greens, and definitely the ones that I could not live without. I could probably do this 4 more times because I have a lot of green eyeshadows or green-ish eyeshadows that I really love. But of all the ones that I swatched for this video, these are the ones that stood out above the rest. And as someone that does really love her green eyeshadow, especially her kind of muted green eyeshadow looks, these are the colors that I would pick. Now you'll notice that I didn't include any like Kelly greens in here because those are just not shades that I wear or like very much. These are the ones that I gravitate more towards. Bright metallics, more muted minty greens, some army greens, and then some really nice dark mattes. That's kind of my idea of the ultimate green eyeshadow palette. I would love to hear from you guys. If you guys have shades of green that maybe I didn't include today, let me know what your favorites down below. Hope that you guys enjoyed this one. I had so much fun filming it for you guys. Honestly, any day that I get to swatch and play with eyeshadows is a good day for me. And there's lots more where this came from. Wait till you guys see the other color ranges that I have for you guys. As I mentioned before, today is day 2 of my 12 days of Christmas. I will be uploading every day for the next 10 days. So make sure that you are along for the ride. Have your notifications turned on. But that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for stopping by. Merry Christmas to you all. I hope that you guys are doing well. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye.